Good. So we will speak today about Sutra 34 from Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, where he brings, not so much like Patanjali, a way to integrate our spiritual practice and our social life. Yeah, I can go to the next slide. So essentially, we often have this kind of inner conflict where we want to live a spiritual life, and if we start to meditate and we have very wonderful meditations, we feel a beautiful peace, a beautiful elevated inner state, and then we long to have contact with others. And when we come to have contact with others, it's not always as elevated, no? Did you notice? That when we come and we interact with other people, it doesn't necessarily have as high states of consciousness as the state of peace, of interiorization that we have when we meditate profoundly. What Patanjali does in this sutra, he gives a very essential, like all of Patanjali's sutra, they're very short and essential. He gives a short and essential explanation of if you relate to others with these four attitudes: friendship to the happy, compassion to those who suffer, joy in front of the virtuous, and a certain state of detachment, non-judgmental in front of those who are non-virtuous or sinful or so forth. Once we relate to others in this way, vividly, with a lot of heart, our interaction with people becomes a spiritual practice, as important, as effective as meditation, as prayer, and so forth. So we will explore this fundamental sutra and see how it becomes applicable to our lives. Yeah, I think somebody has their mic on. Somebody else. Yeah. So let's look a little bit. First of all, Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras. Scholars say about 2,300, 2,100 years ago, somewhere between Buddha and Christ. Definitely after Buddha, definitely before Christ. And he explains in this Yoga Sutras the transition between our ordinary state of consciousness, that is mind-based, ego-based, agitation-based, a state of consciousness that is mediocre, where we are not able to shut down our regular mental agitation. Yeah, you know this state that you cannot stop thinking? That's the ordinary state of consciousness, a state in which we are very reactive emotionally to anything coming from the world. And we cannot help it. If somebody tells us a bad word, we cannot help but get emotional about it. If somebody tells us some validation, a person of authority tells us some validation, then we cannot help but feeling flattered and so forth. In this level of ordinary mental agitation, an ordinary level of egoism, we are completely slaves to the outer world. Our mood will go up and down, and with our mood, our health, our interactions with others, they will move in this way, shifting with our, let's say, our inner state is completely blown in the wind by the outer events. Patanjali shows the way to a higher and higher. He brings many stages, higher and higher levels of consciousness, where the regular chattering mind goes off. There is an ecstatic silence, an expanded stage of consciousness, a capacity to see the spiritual reality, to see our inner nature, and so forth. And he describes all sorts of ways of attaining to this elevated state of consciousness. Most famous is this 8th stage of Patanjali, where through concentration, focusing on one object, consciousness expands, the limitations of the individuality are dissolved, and one attains samadhi or cosmic consciousness. Next slide. Here he describes a different modality. It's one of 7 modalities that he describes. And the context is like this. We'll just touch. This is between first chapter of Patanjali, between sutras 30 and 43. Patanjali, generally, the whole Yoga Sutras, 193 or 194 sutras, and this is the first chapter. The translation here from Swami Satchitananda, the disciple of Shivananda. In Sutra 30, Patanjali describes the obstacles for attaining success on the spiritual path. And the obstacles are disease, laziness, dullness, doubts, lust, false perception, incapacity of going forward, losing ground after we advanced, and so forth. Now, we can overcome, or let's say, and these, before that, these obstacles, they might appear as a kind of shivering of the body, problems with the breath, and so forth. And when they appear, it's very difficult to attain higher and higher states of consciousness. And then Patanjali describes, in order to overcome these obstacles, yeah? So did you ever confront? Did you ever feel a bit of doubts about spirituality? No, what does it do? Very difficult to progress spiritually like this. Or dullness, or a lot of desire for lower things, lust and all that, laziness. It's very difficult to progress spiritually as such. And what Patanjali says, these things are residing somehow in this mediocre state of consciousness. And by lifting the consciousness even a bit, these impurities, dullness, doubts, laziness, they will burn. The false perception, they will burn in the light of consciousness. And he describes 7 methods. One, the method that we have here, through having these attitudes, harmonious attitudes towards other, another one by calming the breath, another one by visualizing the light inside, another one by becoming aware of the state of consciousness we have while we are dreaming or in deep sleep. And by doing one of these 7 methods, one can attain samadhi, and in samadhi, or in this elevated state of consciousness and cosmic consciousness, the impurities will burn. Patanjali describes 7 methods, and you don't have to do all 7. Yeah, according to the interpretations of Vivekananda in his book Raja Yoga, it's enough that you take one that fits you. So if we ourselves are more social beings, we can choose the one that we speak about today, Sutra 33, where we elevate the way we interact with others until we can reach, as we will see mathematically, almost higher states of consciousness. If we are more withdrawn, we can do by focusing on the breath, the gaps between the inhale and exhale, as he suggests in Sutra 34. If you like sleeping, you can do Sutra 38 and enter lucidly the world of dreams and attain high states of consciousness like that. Yeah, the sutra itself, next slide. That's the Sanskrit sutra. It says basically that by having friendship to those who are happy, yeah, Maitri, having karuna, compassion for those who are in pain, being happy for the punya, the virtuous, and being detached, having equanimity in front of the apunya, the non-virtuous, nasty people, if you are detached about them, one can attain or purify consciousness and eventually lead to higher states of consciousness. And now let's see technically how it's done. Yeah. When you read it for the first time, and when I read it for the first time, we had this presentation with our teacher, with Nikushor, with Adinata. It sounds a bit banal. It sounds a little bit like kindergarten. Be kind and be nice and all will be well. But actually is very, very profound. And why is it profound? Because the way we relate to others is the way we define ourselves in front of ourselves. The universe continuously asks us, who are you? No? Who are you, Alexandra? Who are you, Charlie? Who are you, Shweta? Is constantly asking us, and we answer predominantly by actions. So there is something inside of us that doesn't know who we are. Not precisely. We live in this illusion that we know, but we don't really, really know. And we check. It's like a program inside that is constantly checking, who are we? And when we behave in a cowardly way, we would come to the conclusion that we are cowards because we acted like that. And it doesn't matter if you stay there and say suggestion, I am courageous, I am courageous. That thing inside believes how you behave. And if we are very stingy, then it will say, okay, I am stingy. If we are very generous, it will recognize me, Corina, me, Daria. I am generous. So when we believe ourselves very limited and we act as if we are limited and selfish and full of scarcity, then we will believe that that is who we are, and our state of consciousness will be determined as such. Next slide. Basically, the main and most obvious illusion, the biggest cognitive problem, is that we believe, and if you check if it's true or not, if this is what you believe or not, we believe and act that this body is the center of the universe and is the only thing that matters. Or it matters for very selfish people, is the only thing that matters, and things only matter if they are connected to this body. And for others, we believe that this body is worth more than everyone else. We deserve a bigger piece of the cake. We deserve more. And this is the center. This is the center, this body, this head. That's the center. And everything is the periphery. Which is, obviously not true, but emotionally we live with this belief. And because we believe with this belief, we are fundamentally selfish. And because we are fundamentally selfish, the mind is agitated, impure, and mediocre. And our state of consciousness is like 2% of what it can be. We live in this very pure state of consciousness, very poor state of consciousness, because we believe this illusion that this little body is the center. When our attitudes show continuously, this body is what is important. There is only one chair in the bus. I put myself and I sit. I am important. That makes our mind more and more gross. If there's one seat there and we're tired, but we look around and we see somebody older, somebody sick, somebody pregnant, and we offer them the seat, we believe we are not just this body. A little bit more. We believe we are soulful. And then having repeatedly a soulful attitude to others, our state of consciousness begins to rise. No, do you know this joy? You know this joy when you're like, take such an example, you're really tired, it's a long bus ride, you really want to sit. And before putting your butt there and sitting, you look and you see somebody in need and you put them there. There is a silence, no? Do you know that silence? There is a joy in the heart. Not the joy in the legs remain tired. Fine. But there is a joy in the heart. And all these four attitudes that we will see now from Patanjali, they create this joy in the heart by revealing how we relate to others will answer that question, who am I? I am a soul, a spirit, not just this body. I care about all bodies. I cannot help it. It is my nature. This is not a mental idea, a speculation, a suggestion, but a profound attitude that is manifested continuously in action. And when that is happening, the mind becomes quiet, and the 2% of consciousness becomes 10%, 20%, 50%. And the glorious peace and expansion, paranormal perceptions, and all the glory of spirituality is revealed by this fundamental shift. Away with the illusion that this body is the center of the world and deserves more than others, and inside this heartful feeling that we are connected and that I genuinely care about others. Next slide. So we'll start with the second attitude and then go to the first. So Patanjali says, when you see people suffer, have compassion. What's the opposite, no? What's the egoistic way, the selfish way in front of other people? Suffering is indifference. Every time you see someone suffer and you are indifferent, you strengthen that shell of the ego. You strengthen ignorance. You make your mind more agitated and you become smaller and smaller and smaller. Every time we have a fight with our girlfriend, with our boyfriend, our husband, our wife, our boss, our child, our mother, and we see them in pain, and they say, but I'm in pain. Say, I don't care about your pain. You're wrong and this and that and that. We enter into very deep unconsciousness. Every time we pass by a beggar and we don't let him into our hearts. Every time you see someone in pain and you don't let it touch you, you strengthen this suffocating shell of the ego. And we become smaller and smaller as human beings. But if we cultivate this attitude of Patanjali, when we see suffering, we become compassionate, that will make us soulful. And you know it from your life. Yeah? Sometimes you're in a fight, you're fighting with somebody, arguing, and then you see that your lover, your friend, your relative is in pain. And then you're like, are you in pain? Yes, I'm sorry. And we soften and the fight stops because our perspective expands. It's not like we are right and they are wrong. We start to see because we care. Our state of consciousness, instead of being 2% small, like a horse like that, becomes wide as soon as we let compassion in. To the maximum, St. Francis got enlightened very much by taking care of the lepers that nobody wanted to touch. He would kiss them and caress them and wash them. And they would complain, Francis, your monks, they don't know how to clean me, and they all the time hurt me and my scars. Your monks are so annoying, and the food they bring to us is not good. And he would say to that annoying leopard, he says, don't, I'm very sorry, I will clean you myself. And he would clean all his wounds. And such compassion that the leper was healed and Francis was exalted to enlightenment simply by this act of love. Repeated, repeated. When Ramakrishna traveling India, he saw poor people. They don't have clothes. They don't have food. He said to his rich disciple, Mathur Babu, if you want me to travel with you, you give a piece of food and a piece of clothes to all of these people. And he says, we don't have money. He says, then I stay and I live with them and you go back. I live with them if you don't give them money. And he convinced them. He gave them a little bit of money. But those very acts of compassion, also in the life of Mother Teresa and so forth, they became a source of enlightenment by really, really having compassion and caring, yeah, for all, from Buddhists, for all sentient beings. When you care like that, you see yourself naturally as spirit. Next slide. Another attitude that Patanjali describes is to be friendship. Yeah, to have friendship to the happy. What's the opposite? When we see people happy and we become envious or critical. What's with this joy now? Look at these people. They are not mature. That's why they are happy. They don't know what life is about. To be indifferent, to be sarcastic, to be heartless. And when we are like that, we disconnect from happiness. Yeah, and we say to ourselves, the walls of my separation, the walls of my separated identity are more important than happiness. I will stay here and be miserable. I will not connect neither to happiness nor to the happy. And the opposite of that, when we rejoice together, when there is happiness and friends. No, what do you feel like when you're happy with your friends? It gives meaning to this gray life, doesn't it? When we're out together, or even more in spiritual camps, in spiritual gatherings where people sing and dance and meditate together, then all the happiness of everyone combines and it gives a tremendous heartful meaning to life if we allow friendship and happiness to mix. Next slide. Next, to have joy in the face of the virtues, punya. When we are envious, critical against the virtues, we block ourselves in front of virtue and in front of our souls. You see somebody doing charity or being kind, you say, oh yeah, they just want validation. They're a hypocrite. I hate them because they remind me I'm not virtuous, I'm envious. And we separate from virtue and we separate from them. When we rejoice with the virtuous, we assimilate their virtue and gain their friendship. One of the best ways to practice this is to read biographies of saints, of masters, of yogis. If you read the life of Gandhi, of Milarepa, the life of Christ, and you rejoice in the glory of their actions, the life of Ramakrishna, you rejoice in that. You don't just read in a scholarly way. You read with faith, with happiness, the life of saints and masters. You assimilate their quality. Yeah, reading, I don't know how many, 100 or 200 such biographies. Very often they begin in early life. Christian saints, yogi saints, Sufi saints, they begin in early life reading the lives of other saints and rejoicing. That's their fun. The stories of masters, the Bible, the Gita, these stories, they thrill the heart of the children who will become saints. And if we allow ourselves to really be happy, that happiness will be a connective point, and the virtue of such masters, it's a very profound practice, will enter our being. And then the last attitude, which is perhaps the most complex, and when we've done a survey in our group. We have this group for the revelation of the self, more than 300 people. This is the most difficult. 80-something% of the people say this is the hardest thing to cultivate, and indeed, I was also for me personally, this is the most difficult attitude to cultivate, and this is to be non-judgmental, to be detached in front of people who are nasty. This is really hard. And this is actually the footstone, the fortress of our ego, is our incapacity to stay detached, calm, non-judgmental in front of evil. When we judge and we get revengeful, we enter very superficial and sometimes very dark areas of the ego. We answer this question, who am I? I am so separate from this idiot that I hate that I should hurt them. Even if we haven't physically hurt them, or even verbally, or even hurt them on Facebook or something, even if we haven't done it, the fact that we have it as an attitude and that we believe we should hurt them, it makes us defined as something extremely separated from the world, very lonely, if we have the right to judge others, to hurt others, to take revenge. Because we are so important and they hurt us, we should hurt them 7 times more. Yeah, next slide. Now, it is inevitable. Yeah, you're not going to clean the world from unjust people. Many people have tried in all sorts of gulags and concentration camps to clear this world from any injustice. It normally makes things worse. We will meet nasty people. We will meet unjust people. They will treat us unjustly. They will attack us. All these things will happen. No doubt about it. As long as we live in this world, it's going to happen. If every time we meet injustice, we become selfish, we will never discover who we are. Because we need time to be very, very peaceful for a long time and to be selfless for a long time before our soul and spirit can be revealed. And if every time we go in, we do our meditation, we do our prayer, we do our charity, we do wonderful things to go in the soul, and then we meet one nasty injustice. Our boyfriend, girlfriend didn't call us. Somebody said a nasty word and criticized us. Somebody cut us in traffic, something, and then we become evil, then all our journey inside, yeah, we're completely outside. If there are analogically 10 levels of our being, the 10th being very, very external and selfish, and we want to discover level 0, then we meditate and we become quiet and live a harmonious life and eat well and read well and live a very pure life. And we go from level 10 of very profound selfishness to level 2, very soulful and very connected. And then we get angry. It took us like a month to reach here. And then we get angry and hateful and boom, we're back to level 10. Back very far in the periphery of our being. So in order to complete our journey inside, anger, revenge, judgment need to be conquered. In the book of Isaiah in the Bible, he says, the Lord is the judge. The Lord is the lawgiver. Revenge is with the Lord, not with human beings. Let the one who created the world take care that everybody gets their payment. It's not we are not now entrusted. We are not getting our paycheck from karma, and that we need to bring everybody's bad karma on them. This is not our job. And Christ in the Sermon on the Mount says, just not lest ye be judged for the same. For what judgment you judge, you will be judged, and what measure you use, it will be measured back unto you. Now, implicitly, what he says here is if you won't judge, you will not be judged. And if you measure always with kindness, it will always be measured unto you. It's very profound. Everything that you ever want to be forgiven for, it will be forgiven to you if you forgive everything for others. It's a very, very profound saying. Next slide. When we judge and hate and continuously get attached to who we aggress, we will stay extremely intertwined with them. No matter how much you love your lover, when you're really revengeful towards someone, you will think about them more than about your kids, than about your mother, than about your beloved. And what you think about, you will become. If you eat onion, you burp onion. If you think hate, you burp hate. So when we are in this mode of judgment, we become obsessive. You have a fight for 5 minutes, and then we think about it for weeks, hours and hours every day, because we are so judgmental. And our mind becomes very uncontrolled. You know this state, no? You enter a fight, you were peaceful, or you receive this message, and now you're furious. We're furious, and then for hours and hours, we lost our peace. I would make this experiment with my lover. You probably know the situation. You have a fight, and then the fight moves into a messages fight. Yeah? Did you ever have such a fight? You know this? You fight, and then you start to fight on messages and give your arguments. And then, having trained some years of meditation before that, I would say, okay, I make an experiment. For the next 10 minutes, no matter what happens, I will not allow myself to judge my lover in any way. I will not have any negative thought about her. Nothing. And I would control it for 10 minutes, and the pain would go away. And I realized, and I've done this experiment many, many, many times, and I realized that the vast majority of pain in a fight I create myself by judging the person that I love. And if I stop judging, the pain stops, the agitation stops. And I can see not just that I am right and that they are wrong, but I can see the whole perspective. You see, essentially, if every time we meet evil, we become evil, evil is our boss. Do you understand? There's no way around it. If every time we meet evil, we become evil, we are children of evil, controlled by evil. Because evil can just make us evil whenever evil wants. But if we can remain good in front of evil, our innermost castle is forever free, is forever good. When we are detached and non-judgmental in this way and firm in goodness, evil can attack our body, can attack our property, our self-image, can cause defamation, can do all sorts of things, but it will not taint our souls. That's the thing. And that's why this sutra of Patanjali is so profound. Because if we keep our soul free from evil, free from judgment, and we do some spiritual practice, we will discover who we are. And that is the goal of goal, the price of price, samadhi, the revelation of the self. Everything else is pale in front of that. All the other joys of life, they come and go, but this is solid, everlasting. This has real meaning, and it begins with these 4 attitudes. Last slide. When we truly cultivate these attitudes, then the interaction with the social world will make us more spiritual. Our contact with others, yeah? And you see, when your lover or best friend is happy, be their friend. When they are virtuous, be happy for them. When they are in pain, have compassion. When they're being nasty, detach, calm down, don't judge. And if you hold it like that, every interaction will draw you closer and closer to the supreme goal, to the supreme gift which exists in your heart, which is you, the essential you. When this mental agitation and emotional agitation, where the past and future and all that ends, and this light that you are, which is the light that you are right now, is revealed. And this is a form of what is called Jagarat Yoga, the yoga of living in the world. And in this way, all our interactions with others will show to this program inside that we are spirit. And we will become utterly convinced that we are spirit, and all doubts will be gone. And then it will be revealed as a direct experience, revealed and forgotten, revealed and forgotten, revealed and established, finished. And this is the path that Patanjali describes. And these are the ideas that I would like to share with you today. Yourselves, if you want to share. Also, the people from the self-revelation, you can also share, because we've done this now for a month together. Tony.
Hello,
Hi, Tony.
Uriel. Thank you for
Hi,
the
good to see
lecture.
you.
Very insightful and interesting.
Mm.
I wanted to ask about compassion. Like sometimes it would happen that I would think like, okay, so many people suffer in some way, and it brings a lot of pain. I suffer myself too. Like, wow, the world is so bad. There are so many bad things happening, people suffering, and like it is painful, and I may like almost cry for someone thinking about their problems. And there are a lot of bad things happening around with like almost everyone. So
Yes.
And the suggestion is to feel that, to process it, or also detach in some way, because like it drains a lot of energy too, I think.
Yes. Yes, good question, Tony. So we need to understand what compassion means. You see, we have taken, because we had a lot of attitudes, we did it quite short and to the point. We take indifference to suffering as one extreme and compassion as the other. But it's not the only ways of relating to other people's suffering, right? We have indifference, and then we have certain sensitivity, right? Which is on the way to compassion, but is not compassion. Now, if we just look at other people's suffering with sensitivity, with hyperreceptivity, and with despair, because you also had a gram of despair there in you when you see other people suffering, it does make us worse. And then that's why also people get indifferent, because there's so much pain in the world. When you open yourself to be sensitive to it, to be empathic to it, you feel bad, you feel desperate, you're just one Tony. What can you do? A whole world of suffering. And then, okay, we put a bit of indifference because we don't know what to do. Compassion has in it, yes, there's a definition. There's one of the most important psychologists of our time, Paul Ackner, he says, Compassion is a particular form of empathy to other people's suffering. And it's true from the psychological perspective, but in the spiritual perspective, it means much more. When you access empathically, truly, the suffering of others, you also access an inexhaustible force, which is here to heal all suffering, which is hopeful. So from the spiritual perspective, when we allow true compassion in, and there are all these meditations with the godly attribute of compassion and so forth, then we don't just feel passively other people's pain, but we're also infused with a power which comes from this broadening of the identification of who we are. If Julia's pain is my pain, if I care when she is in pain, that shows me, when I think who I am, I'm not just this body, I'm also Julia, to a degree. And then I am in contact with this great spirit, which has a power to take care not just of Uriel, but also of Julia, and also of Tony, and also of everyone that is in pain, proportionally, as much as this body can take and channel. But nevertheless, the inward contact is with a great source of force that cares and that is sensitive. But it is not just sensitivity. Just sensitivity will lead to despair. If we are just passively feeling everyone's suffering, in Goethe's Faust, Faust says, the whole suffering of the world I feel. But it's a passive, it's a dark way of going there. Yeah. When it's Buddha feeling compassionate of the world, he says there is also a solution. And he embodies that solution. So compassion has a yin side, a receptive side, an empathic side, and an empowering side. And we need, when we come to cultivate this attitude of compassion, to actively seek for both. And if we haven't found them, then the work, the reading, the inner quest needs to be more and more refined until we find it. Julia. Oh, a long time I didn't hear your voice. Yeah.
Hey. So I have a question also about compassion. I've noticed that for me, it's sometimes even easier to feel compassion towards people I don't know, or towards situations that I'm not personally involved with, like, I don't know, maybe a beggar on the street or something like that, rather than feeling compassion for a person that I'm very much entangled with in a situation that is intense, like in a conflict or something like that. And I've noticed that I'm like jumping in and out of feeling, I don't know, feeling annoyed or betrayed or hurt. And in those moments, obviously, it's hard to feel compassion for the other person. And then going back into the heart and feeling, okay, well, I feel compassion for this person, and there's the story behind them behaving in this way and so on. But I feel like I have not grasped the, I don't know, the perfection, let's say, of staying in the compassion, because it's just jumping in and out. And I'm not talking about months. Like, this has been like 2-3 years or something like that, ever since I started to observe it. And it seems really hard, because then in between there's entanglements of like pain and like years of relationship and so on. So I'm really struggling with that, and I would really like to stay compassionate, and I don't really know how.
Yes.
So what to do?
Good. Yes, what to do. It's mainly the fourth attitude here. You see, it's difficult. So if we have a very external part of our personality, just for the sake of this lecture, we called it level 10. Just very, very external. At level 10, we are super selfish. Only me matters. And compassion is deeper inside. But when you try to just reach compassion by seeking compassion, it will be difficult to find, because something is pushing you out from deep Yulia. Yeah, deep Yulia, level 5 Yulia is full of compassion. Closer and closer, yeah. You know this game, hot, cold, when you go and you search for somebody in the room, they'll be hot, hot, cold, cold. Yeah, so hot, 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 close to your heart. Your inner nature, full of compassion. But when we get pissed, when we feel judgmental, when we are hurt, when we are right, and we have all the reasons to be right, then we go to level 10, and then no compassion. Now, okay, you're at level 10, you want to go deeper, closer, hot, 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 hot to Yulia's heart, where you will inevitably find compassion. You need to understand the mechanism of anger. You need to contemplate. Many people, they try to forgive, they come. Now, you know, I'm a psychologist. They come and say, I try to forgive and I cannot forgive. Yeah, because you haven't really explored your anger. The anger stays half digested, half in, half out. I'm allowed, I'm not allowed to be angry. And then it just stays there as a bulk, untouched, frozen anger. 2 years, 3 years, like we said. But every time you think about that person, that undigested anger, yeah, Shakti without Shiva, chaos. Something that we're unconscious of pushes us to the lower parts of our being. So you need to be properly angry. Not necessarily now with the person, you don't need to hit the person with a stick. But be in your room, close the curtains and be properly angry, and digest your anger with consciousness and write it down and do therapy and speak to a friend and contemplate and this and this and that until your anger is infused with consciousness. And then see how you can forgive. And then see how you can become non-judgmental, and then gradually. I did it many times myself with people that I cared about, and then I stopped caring about because I was so angry. And then when I really because I also tend to suppress my anger. And when I really let the anger out in my poor room that has seen a lot of my anger, then in the end of that, I would naturally feel to forgive, and I would naturally care again. I would naturally feel love again for the people that I was angry with, and compassion would come naturally. So if you seek for compassion, you need to go through your anger, digest it, forgive, detach, let go of the judgment. But in these steps, and then compassion will come. Does it make sense?
Yeah, maybe I can ask a follow-up question.
Yes.
So I feel like I've done that already quite a lot. So would you say that it's like a process that does it end at some point? Like I feel like I'm tapping into anger, and there's a lot of anger apparently.
Yeah. But it's finite. You don't have an infinite anger. Yeah. It's a finite amount of anger. It's just sometimes the anger loops and it doesn't get really infused with. And there are all sorts of assumptions, ways of seeing the world, and it needs to be seen, expressed very fully, and then understood to its essence. And yeah, if it's difficult by yourself, then it's good you do with a therapist. But the assumptions that bring the anger and this and that, it's finite. In the end, it's finite. And there are particular thoughts, particular beliefs that take the past situation and they say, therefore, I should be very, 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 very angry and judgmental. So you need to meet the entirety of the anger, meet the entirety of the beliefs, questions the beliefs, see the price of anger. And like this, step by step, it does have a finality. It does have an end. Yeah, but it needs to surface to consciousness, all of it. That's the thing. And it hurts a bit, it's confusing a bit. It's good to have some kind of support, so there is a thread. Because you can stay hundreds of hours with your anger if it loops and loops and loops and loops uselessly. You need to take it with consciousness to its root, to its essence, which is a different thing than indulging in anger. You understand? As far as we can extend here. Yes, we will have, I hope, one day this emotional healing module about anger with 7 meetings. We already did it once in a retreat because we had with all the emotions, but with anger we haven't done yet. Good. Good, my dears. So if there are no more
Bună seara!
questions.
Aș vrea să
here
spun
is
și eu câteva cuvinte.
Cine, Victoria?
Victoria, da.
Da. Okay, so we will say, Victoria will speak in Romanian and I will... hai să facem așa, Victoria. Hai să facem la final, ca să trecem în română la final. Bine? O să spun la revedere pe cei care vorbesc engleză și... So, Victoria will speak in Romanian, but in the end. And then Madalina, if you want. Madalina, you can ask in English. No?
Yes, I can
Yes.
speak in English.
Yes.
I wanted to share something about specifically about compassion.
Please.
Because I did this, Nico has this book and conference about the stages of love, and I went through all of them with a group tapas. And right before the stage with the tapas for love compassion, right before that stage, after we ended the previous tapas, I was in a public place, and I was also doing the 14 steps meditation for the revelation of the self. And during some breaks, while I was doing some things there, I was in a public library, and I noticed this change, this shift of consciousness, if I can call it like that. Like I was seeing a lot of lots of people, and so all kind of people, all races, all sorts of people. Well, it was a public place, so I had the opportunity to see a lot of things. And for people for whom previously I maybe have felt disgust or something like that, now I was feeling compassion, and I was so touched by it, and I saw this this change, this transformation. I think it's a better word. And also later on the same day, I went to the train station, and while I was on the way from the library to the train station, I saw a woman who was working on stitches, and I felt so much compassion in my heart. I was overwhelmed by the feeling. And yeah, personally, to me, this tapas with going through all the stages of love, and also doing the 14 steps method, both of them together. I mean, yeah. It was a shift.
Beautiful.
And now I feel it's much more easier to me to feel compassion, even for people with whom I got angry. Like last summer or something like that happened. Like someone I love very much, and he did something really bad. I mean, it was, in my view, it was terrible. But okay, in the beginning I was angry, of course. And but then I realized how, yeah, that this is how it's his nature to be like that. So what can I do about it? It's just like Jesus says, like, forgive them, Father, for what they are doing, because they don't know what they are doing. So yeah,
Yes.
I just started to feel compassion, like this is it.
Yes. Thank you, Madalena. It's very beautiful and soulful. Very beautiful, touching. Good, my dear. So we will conclude now for the English speakers and give some time also for Romanian speakers, and they will say in Romanian and I will answer in Romanian. We can turn off also over there and the YouTube. Deci o să